Good morning, everybody. So great to see you all. We're glad that you've joined us to our online community. Thank you so much for being a part of this Covenant Church Colleyville celebration. Today is our day to honor and to pray over all those who are involved with our school, the school system. And in just a moment, we're going to do that. We are so excited for what happened during the revival week. It was absolutely powerful each night, Monday through Wednesday. It built until we got to a point where Pastor Stephen says, you know what, I feel we need one more night. And let me tell you, that one more night is what we needed. So we gathered on Thursday night. And on Thursday night, Pastor Stephen began to talk about revival must be Father-founded, Son-centered, and Holy Spirit-driven. And there were testimonies, 15 or 20 people, I think, testified of immediate or instantaneous healing in the service on that night. And one of those was a little 8-year-old, he looked to be about 8 or 9 years old, a little boy who said that he had dealt with anxiety and fear all of his life. And he said in Tuesday night's revival service, when he was worshiping, he looked down and he saw chains wrapped around his wrist, and he knew it was the fear and the anxiety, and he was bound by it. It's a little kid. But he says that as I continued to worship, he says, I saw the chains begin to fall off. And he said, I went home that night, and he says, I'm really anxious right before bedtime. He said, I was not afraid, and he says, God has set me free. Perhaps you're in this place today, and that's a word for you, that he's with us in the fire, he's with us in the water, he's with us through every challenge, every trial. We shall prevail. We don't have to be afraid. So revival's continuing. How's it continuing? It's continuing through the 21 days of prayer. Starting tomorrow morning, going all the way to September the 2nd, we are going to be praying in the sanctuary from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday. And then we have prayer that happens every Saturday morning at 8:30 right here in this location. And then an hour before service times on Sunday morning. Now, one of the things I did not see in the announcements is that service times are changing next week. We're going back to our regular schedule. You know, we adjusted things for summer. So next week, we're back to 8:30, 10, and 11:30. Don't forget to mark your calendar. It's going to be an awesome time. So getting back to prayer, if you want something different, you have to do something different. If nothing changes, nothing changes. I'm telling you, I don't know anything in this world that can change your life, change the place where you are, like a dedicated season of prayer and consecration. So for the next 21 days, that's what we're going to do. We're believing God for an outstanding school year and a start to the school year. We're believing God to finish this year out strong. This is why we are now setting aside this time. Make plans to be at as many prayer gatherings as you can, 6 a.m. to 7. We're cognizant you have to get to work. We're going to start on time. We're going to finish on time. And get to as many as you can. If you can't make it physically to one of our campuses, then here's what we want you to do. We want you to join online with our Carrollton campus. They will live stream the prayer meetings that morning. And we're excited for what God's going to do over the next 21 days. I want to tell you a story about when I was in first grade. The first day of school for me was very unusual and unexpected. And here's why. The year I started school was the first year that they integrated the classrooms. And I remember that I was supposed to be going to C.E. Robinson. C.E. Robinson was a school in our community, and it's where all types of activity would happen. I can remember at 3 years old getting stuck upside down on my dad's truck at the baseball game. Scared the daylights out of me because I was afraid if I tumbled over, I'd fall off the truck onto the ground. But it was where all the activity happened, and I was so looking forward to going to C.E. Robinson. And I was on the bus, I'll never forget, sitting on the right side of the bus. I was looking out the window, and as we approached the school, the bus was not slowing down. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, what are we doing? And as we passed by the school, I was in shock. We went right by the school, and I didn't know what was going on. But what had happened, there was about 35 or 40 little black kids from our community called Bayou Rapides. We were being bused into a school where there were about 600 white kids or so, and they were integrating the schools, and the name of my elementary school was J.B. Nachman Elementary. And if I recall correctly, when the bus pulled up, there were protesters lined up along the sidewalk. But the reality is in my innocence, I didn't know what the fuss was all about. I didn't know that there was a cultural shifting happening in the community. Why? Because my parents didn't say, hey, you're going to a school that's not C.A. Robinson. I don't remember them telling me that. But the other reason why it wasn't a big deal is because we were never taught to be prejudiced. We played with the white kids in our neighborhood. They were friends, and we didn't care about any of that stuff. And so here we find ourselves in this school, and I was directed to the first grade hall where I would meet my first school teacher. Her name was Mrs. McGee. Now, Mrs. McGee seemed like she was tall as a redwood, and when I looked up, all I saw was this woman towering over me with this big, it looked like, if I remember correctly, a beehive hairstyle. And her face was plump and round, kind of like Santa Claus, and she had the kindest eyes and smooth white skin. And let me tell you something, I didn't feel threatened by her at all, and what she did over the course of those next several months was created what I would call a very safe atmosphere for me. But on the first day of school, it didn't take me long to realize that I was different from the other kids. I was the only black kid in the class, but that wasn't the difference I noticed. The difference I noticed is I couldn't read, and I couldn't write, and I couldn't count. I remember Mrs. McGee taking a strip of masking tape. She put it on the right side of my desk, and on top of that masking tape, she wrote my name. I remember her taking extra time to help me sound out my letters. She gave me a lot of attention. And here's the reality, she made me feel so special. Even though I was behind academically and didn't understand a lot of things. I even remember this on the work that we turned in. She, in first grade, you get the S for satisfactory or the U for unsatisfactory. She would write on my paper, tried. Isn't that awesome? Tried. She was saying he's making an effort, and I'm going to do everything that I can to encourage him. So as the year progresses and I'm starting to catch up on things, one day I was busy working on an assignment, and Mrs. McGee stepped out of the room for just a brief moment. When she came back into the room, she signals to me, come here. And she came and she bent over and she says, Ricky, I want you to go to the library. You know how in grade school they got the little library in the corner of the room with all your little special books? Well, she said, go pick out your favorite book, and not an easy one. And she says, and when you get it, I want you to step outside with me. So I went and I got my book, and I stepped outside. She was outside the door in the hall, and there was a second grade teacher, Mrs. Ruth Crago. She was waiting. And Mrs. McGee said, I want you to read to Mrs. Crago. And let me tell you, I read that whole book. I read it fluidly, pronouncing every word, pausing at every comma, stopping at every period. And when I finished reading, both Mrs. McGee and Mrs. Crago, their faces beamed with pride and joy. And she told me that Mrs. Crago was going to be your second grade teacher. Now, here's what I think. Mrs. Crago must have been related to Mrs. McGee because she had that high hairstyle. She had that plump face. She had kind eyes and that smooth white skin. But let me tell you something. Standing on that hall that day, I felt a warmness just engulfed my heart. I felt so special. I felt incredible. And so I just want to thank Mrs. McGee, after all these years, for believing in me, for creating a safe environment that I could learn. Even though I was behind, she helped me get up to speed. So as we talk about this school year beginning, I just have a word of encouragement right now to you students. Students, here's what I want you to know, and it's just one thought. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. You see, I couldn't read or write, or I couldn't count when I started on that first day of school. But by the end of the school year, I was reading past the first grade stage. I had a desire to learn, and the teachers creating that right environment helped me, inspired me to be better. But let me just tell you something. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the reality is, it's good to start with something. It's better to start with something than with nothing. And so this is a brand new school year. Last year doesn't count. The year before doesn't count. What you have to do is make it count right now. You see, if you're going to start a business, it's better to start with $100,000 than with zero. And so it's better to start with something and finish stronger than to start with nothing and finish strong. You have an opportunity. So how is it that you're going to make this year count? And how is it that you're going to finish strong? Number one, make up your mind it's going to be the best year ever. Make up your mind it's going to be the best year ever, because here's the reality. You have to be determined this year to have an attitude of gratitude. Yes, you're going to have a lot of work. Yes, there's pressure that comes from hanging out with your friends and doing those kinds of things. But I'm going to tell you, if you have the right attitude, the right mindset, it's going to be the best year ever. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I talked about my football experience, and I was so mad at the Menard Eagles for really just dogging me out my junior year. I was going to pay them back my senior year, and I said, when I get the football, I'm not coming down. And that's exactly what happened. I ran 2 touchdowns that night because I made up in my mind I was going to overcome every obstacle. And so I want to encourage you all to do that. If you're going to finish strong, then understand this, that it starts right here. You just got to make up in your mind it's going to be the best year ever. Be determined to keep your priorities in place. If it's going to be the best year ever, you have to keep your priorities in place. And I like to say it as Stephen Covey said about the attributes of the most successful people. They learned this one principle among 6 others: work before you play. Work before you play. The bottom line is the video games are going to be there. The athletics are going to be there. The extracurricular stuff's going to be there. But here's the bottom line. Take care of your business. Work before you play. Do the hard things first. Because after coming through the hard things, you will feel so excited, so relieved. So Seth drives a 2010 Chevy Malibu, and his headlight went out. Anybody ever tried to change the headlight on a 2010 Malibu? Let me tell you what you have to do. You have to take the front bumper off. And they've got bolts that are in places that are almost impossible to get through. And I made that my project. I went online, looked at YouTube. This can't be that hard. 2 hours later, I was absolutely exhausted, almost to the point of dehydration, laying on that ground trying to get to the right screws. I finally got the headlamp replaced. And I walk into the house, and I said to Sid, I think I'm dying. I didn't know it was going to require all of this to get the headlights off and to put a new one on. But then I said to her, but I feel so good. I got it done. This is what's going to happen, that if you'll work first, work first, play second, it's going to be the best year ever. Here's the other thing I want you to do if you're going to have the great year and you're going to finish strong. You've got to write down your goals. Write down your goals. Put it on paper. Set a course. A goal is a roadmap. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever made straight A's? If not, this is your year to do it. Have you ever been on the principal's honor roll? If not, this is the year to do it. Have you ever been the leader in your class? Have you changed the atmosphere when you walked into an environment that might have been chaotic or might have been trouble-filled? This is the year to do it. It's going to be your best year ever. Finish strong. But in order to finish strong, you got to start strong. You have an opportunity to start strong. Here's the last thing I want to tell you. Don't quit. There will be obstacles this year. There are going to be challenges. There'll be days you won't feel good. There'll be days that your parents will be getting on your last nerve. Sorry, parents, we do get on our kids' last nerve. I know we think that we're all that in a bag of chips and our kids are so in love with us, and they are. They really are. But we do get on their nerves sometimes. And you ought to, because kids are like an arrow. If you don't direct them, they won't hit any targets at all. Set some targets for you. That's a side note for the parents, but to the kids, don't quit. Don't quit. Quitting is not an option. You have to make that up in your mind that I am going to have the best school year ever. Can you say that, all you who are in school, say that I'm going to have the best year ever? Come on, convince me. I'm going to have the best year ever, because I'm not going to quit. Romans the 8th chapter, verse 37 says this, that we are more than conquerors. Say that, I'm more than a conqueror. That means that you don't just win, you win and you come out better than you were when you went into the battle. You're more than conquerors. Philippians 4:13 says this, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. You can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. Psalms 37 chapter, verse 23 and 24 says this, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down. Though you have some difficulties, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get back up. Why? Because the Lord upholds him with his hand. So whatever challenge you face in the classroom, with your friends, with the peer pressure, all of those things, you shall prevail because God is with you. Here's what I've learned in my own life, is that even in the midst of our trouble, even in the midst of our difficulties, God is superintending the process. God is superintending the process. I had a guy tell me one time, he says, Pastor, I lost my job. And he and I prayed lots of times about his job situation. And when he lost it, he was distraught. And I said, man, don't worry about it. You weren't let go. You were set free. 2 weeks later, he had a job. He was making about 30% more income, and he understood what we were talking about, because even though it might look bad, even though you're taking some steps back, a setback is just an opportunity for the step up. God's got you, young people. It's going to be the best year ever. Start strong, finish strong. Now, to the teachers, to the administrators, to the support staff, to the faculty, the staff, the operations people, you are a difference maker. Can you say that? I am a difference maker. You were made to make a difference. You see, Mrs. McGee believed in me. She inspired me. And what she did created a level of confidence in me that set me on a trajectory to success. My first grade teacher. I've got other teachers that I could name right now, and I will this week on Twitter just do some shout outs to the good teachers and to the bad and the lessons that I learned all in the process. But you are difference makers, and if you are going to make a difference, here's several things I want to encourage you in. Number one, remember that you're called. Let me tell y'all something. Ministry has been the hardest job I've ever had, and I've had some hard jobs. There's incredible pressure, there's warfare, there's the burden that we carry knowing the people's challenges. I recognized early on in ministry that there's not enough resource to meet the need. Why? God doesn't give us all the resource we need to meet the needs, because then we would be God. He parcels out the resource so everybody can have a hand in helping to bring him glory. And the reality is this has been a very difficult job. And I came to a place one time when I was under tremendous pressure and stress that I had to ask this question: am I a fool or am I called? Am I a fool or am I called? Well, you know what? I've already made the assessment. I'm not a fool to do what I do. I'm called to do what I do. And here's where you have to come to a place that in the long hours of grading papers and disciplining kids and helping kids work through emotional things and the extracurricular stuff that you're required to be at, you're called. And you are a difference maker. You see, money wasn't the motivator as to why you chose this profession. Fame wasn't the reason you got involved in the educational process. Your love for long summer vacation might have had just a little to do with it, but not really. You see, you got involved in the educational process because you love to learn and you love to teach and you love to instruct and you love to make a difference in the lives of young people. That's why you're in it. You're called to this process. You were made for this. All of my educators, administrators, faculty, staff, operations, can you say this? I was made for this. You were. So here's the second thing. If you're going to make a difference, number one, ask God for his perspective regarding every student entrusted to your care. Ask God for his perspective. You see, God will give you the ability to see those kids, see in those kids what they can't see in themselves. He'll let you see beyond the bad attitude shaped by the conflict and the disorder that's in their home. He'll give you the ability to see solutions that disperse the dark clouds of depression and despair that hovers over them because of relational things, hormonal things, because of what they're exposed to on TV and the internet, the challenges in their community and in their homes. He will allow you to see the leader in them. Thank God for the teachers who saw the leadership gift in me before I saw it in myself, and they called it out of me. I was the vice president of the 6th grade class, and I had no idea what a vice president even was. And they said, "You're a vice president. That means you're number 2 in charge." And I said, "Well, I hope number 1 never leaves, because I'm going to be in big trouble." But people were pushing me because they saw it in me. You will see leaders who can't see that they will one day be the difference makers and the problem solvers just like you. You see, the reality is there are thousands of little Rickies out there whose canvas is blank right now. And you and God can paint a beautiful masterpiece on the canvas of their heart and their mind. You are a difference maker. Here's the other thing I want to encourage you in. Pray. Pray. Pray often. Pray early. At the beginning of the day, pray. Pray over your students' roster. Pray over the lesson plans. When you walk into your office or into that classroom or into that building, put your hands on the threshold and command the blessing and the favor of God. Take authority over the atmosphere. You can take authority over the atmosphere. So when I was in college and I would dedicate the semester to the Lord, and I had a prescribed time that I was going to study, and even in the study time, I had breaks in there. I was very methodical, and here's the reality. I had some guys who lived in the room above mine on the 2nd floor, and it seemed like the moment I started studying, the music went up. And it was so loud and it was distracting, but I knew that I had authority in the Spirit. So here's what I would do. I would say, "Father, the angels hearken to the voice of your command. I have given this semester to you. I have put structure in place so that I can study and give you my very best. I need you to send the angels to whisper in their ear to turn the music down." Guys, if this didn't happen to me over the course of several years, 15 or 20 times, when I would pray that prayer and I would take authority in the atmosphere, within 5 seconds of asking God to whisper in their ear, the music would come down. Was I manipulating and controlling? No. It's just that I got business to take care of for the King. And educators, administrators, support staff, school bus drivers, custodians, whatever your role is in the educational process, you have authority. Take control of the environment in the heavenlies. God's given you that authority. So pray. Pray for wisdom. Pray for wisdom. James, the first chapter, verse 5 says this: if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. And here's what I want you to do. Pray for peace. Pray for peace over you and the students. Isaiah, the 26th chapter, verse 3 through 4 says this: you will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. Trust in the Lord always, for the Lord God is the eternal rock. It's going to be the greatest year ever. Students, finish strong. Start strong, finish strong. Teachers, administrators, support staff, operations, you are difference makers. You've been called to make a difference. It's going to be a beautiful thing at the end of this school year when you say it was the best year ever. I want you to declare that. Start it today, declare it. This is the best year